Hello to all of you dear people around the world. Welcome to the first episode of the Elixir of the Awareness channel. In this episode, we want to talk about the important matter of loneliness. We're going to take a look at this terrifying global pandemic. As you know, loneliness is a very pervasive and important issue in our world today. Although we're on different social networks, but still we feel strangely alone. The world that was promised to us, along with the advancement of technology and various communications, can eliminate our loneliness. But we think most of us still feel lonely. One of the main reasons for this issue is the very fast pace of the world around us. We see each other, but we don't pay attention to each other.
We see each other, but we don't pay attention to each other.
When we pay close attention to someone, we experience their qualities and sufferings, and all this in a kind of deep connection. And we pay attention to the inner details of that person as much as possible. But that's not what we do. And simply we pass each other. The busy and fast world around us doesn't allow us to focus on the depth of our relationships. We believe that the number of our friends isn't important, rather, their quality is important. For example, the number of friends or followers you've on social networks has nothing to do with your feeling of loneliness or its decrease. You may have only one friend, but this one person compensates for a large part of your loneliness. And on the other hand, you can be in contact with dozens of people but still feel lonely. So it depends on the quality of your relationships, not the quantity. Sometimes we prefer to be alone for some reason. But practically we can't achieve perfection in absolute solitude and isolation, and we need to have quality communications. Many great philosophers have long warned that despite the rapid development of our world in the field of communication, we will sink more and more into loneliness. And that's why we think most of us have this feeling that we're together, but we're alone. You can look at loneliness in two ways. One is its positive aspect, which is more common in Eastern societies. Expressions like there is no happiness higher than loneliness. Or in isolation, we can know ourselves more and be aware of ourselves. And on the other hand, there's another point of view that only pays more attention to the negative and dark side of loneliness, which causes brittleness and severe mental and emotional injuries. Actually, we're always ambivalent about loneliness. A part of us draws us to others because we need to connect with them, and another part of us rejects others because it tends to isolate and seek solace in solitude. It seems that loneliness isn't a choice, and it's rooted in our subconscious. When we leave the safe environment of our mother's womb for the first time and enter an unknown world, at that moment we feel very lonely, and this painful feeling will be recorded in our unconscious forever. So when we experience this feeling every time, we're emotionally damaged and suffer a lot and come to the conclusion that we're probably not lovable. And this is the dark side of loneliness. Let's take a closer look at the topic. It seems that loneliness is an inherent and existential part of us. It seems that even no quality of the relationship can compensate for all the loneliness we feel inside. Plato writes like this in his Symposium book, quoting Aristophanes. Humans were perfect and strong. They'd 4 arms and 4 legs, and they became so strong that they split into 2 halves. Today we seem to think that if we find our missing half again, we will be whole again. We will be strong again, and we will be saved from loneliness. But in reality, it isn't like that. And there's always a part of us that isn't understood, and as we said, no one can cover all our loneliness. Although it may compensate for a large part of it. We think that in our relationships with others, we shouldn't expect them to make up for our loneliness 100%, and we think that if this doesn't happen, there must be a problem in our relationship, but this is definitely a wrong idea. It isn't so. We think if a person in a relationship can't solve all our loneliness, then they probably aren't the right person. And so we look for someone else, while this false expectation happens to the next person as well. This is why the relationship of many couples has problems due to these misunderstandings and false expectations. And even in most cases, unfortunately, it ends in separation. Another very interesting point is that it isn't even possible to fully describe and convey our sensory experiences in the form of words and through language. When we suffer deeply from the inside or even enjoy something deeply, describing and explaining our feelings accurately and completely in the form of words is a difficult task. And this also affects our feeling of loneliness. In fact, sometimes we can't convey 100% of our feelings to others in the form of words. This is due to the limited capacity of words to convey our complex emotions. We can never convey to each other exactly all that we feel. In a part of Lars Svendsen's book entitled Philosophy of Loneliness, it's written like this. People are always alone. They make noise and pose and think they understand other people perfectly, and the other people understand them perfectly, but it's all just an illusion. We think we should first understand this inherent loneliness that's rooted in our unconscious, and then we can accept it. It's like we've all been thrown onto a planet where, even though we live together, but we're alone. Accepting this issue can correct our expectations of each other and improve the quality of our relationships. Loneliness has three forms. One is that we always feel lonely, and it's called chronic loneliness. The second type of loneliness is situational loneliness. We sometimes feel lonely, like when we lose a loved one, and because of the situation that happened, we feel lonely for a while. And another form of loneliness is transitory, that is to say, we feel lonely for no particular reason, even without anything special happening. Now ask yourself which of these situations you're in and why you feel lonely inside. One of the most important reasons is that we've friends in our lives who can't play their role in accepting us. Aristotle defines 3 models of friendship. The first type of friendship is based on profit. If you've friends who are in contact with you only for profit, you should know that they cannot reduce your feeling of loneliness, they even increase it. The second type is friendship based on pleasure. It can be said that it's better than friendship based on profit, but its central core is profit, and compared to the friendship of the third type, it's very worthless. Because the third type of friendship is friendship based on virtue, which of course is both useful and enjoyable. It can be said that it's the peak of perfection and quality of a healthy relationship. That is to say, we know the personal inner values of each other, and this mutual understanding exists, so in this way, we can work towards each other's personal growth. Just think deeply about it a little more. Perhaps the reason we feel so deeply alone is that we associate with people whose friendships are generally based on profit and pleasure rather than human virtue. Now let's ask ourselves this important question. Do we have a friend in life with whom our relationship is based on virtue and human values? Another reason for feeling alone is the root of our problems and bitter experiences in the past. But we can be freed from the bitter experiences of the past. We can be saved from our sufferings, provided that we accept them first. And then we've to make them self-aware and let's know them. This is our most important step. We feel lonely because real relationships are different from the ideal relationships we imagine. What we like to experience is far from what we experience in reality. And then we fill this gap with loneliness. The more we reduce this distance, the less lonely we feel. Studies in more than 148 different universities show that one of the main causes of death in our world is loneliness. Yes, it can be really deadly sometimes. We talked about the bitter experiences of the past. An effective treatment method that exists is a very simple method called separation therapy. All of us have damaged parts of our souls, and all of us had suffered in the past. One simple thing that we can do to heal these is that let's distance ourselves from them and imagine them as a forgotten, fragile and weak child, and then embrace that child as a strong adult. And let's start talking to them. Tell them that we will take care of them from now on forever. And from now on, we won't allow bitter experiences to happen to them again. In fact, we talk to ourselves and our sufferings. They are exactly us. So let's close our eyes for a few moments and just imagine. All of us have damaged parts of our souls, and all of us had suffered in the past. One simple thing that we can do to heal these is that let's distance ourselves from them and imagine them as a forgotten, fragile and weak child, and then embrace that child as a strong adult. Let's examine loneliness at the scale of society. How in a society, for some reason, a lot of people feel more alone. In societies where the trust index between people and the government is very low, and they also promise people happiness, freedom, and many other things, but they don't deliver, this has a great impact on the loneliness of the people of that society. But how? Hannah Arendt, the famous libertarian philosopher, says that in a totalitarian structure, that is to say, in any society in which the government doesn't recognize the private sphere of the people, and exercise power by force in all fields the people of that society don't even dare to comment. In fact, people become scattered and lonely. In societies where there's no trust in the governing system, loneliness among people is multiplied in the most violent way possible. Because the people of that society can't even be their true selves. This issue makes them more alone than before, and they inevitably hide behind different masks. Their existence is divided into two parts. A half remains hidden, and the other half isn't real either, and in fact, the person is suppressed within themselves. Totalism increases loneliness, not only at the level of society but also in personal relationships. If we want to selfishly control the whole being of the other party, after a while, only our masks will remain and our partner's true self will fall victim to this form of selfishness in that relationship. The antidote to loneliness is love. We just want to say, if our feeling of loneliness with the person we love doesn't completely disappear, this is a completely normal matter. And the problem isn't from your partner or even your family or friends. If some part of us isn't always understood, it isn't our partner's fault. If you experience such feelings, you should know that the problem isn't always your relationship. And sometimes you just need to change your perspective and expectations. Don't forget that we all have secrets that we're afraid to tell even to ourselves. So how can we expect others to understand us all? The fact is that we humans are extremely complex and incomprehensible creatures. But the important thing is that despite accepting the truth of loneliness, we can understand that in the heart of this loneliness, there's a place for the hearts of two people to come closer. We can be together, live and be happy, but if we feel lonely for some moments, please consider it as an inseparable part of the nature of all of us humans. We promise you in this way, our relations will be completely changed, and we can achieve a higher quality of our relationships. The final question of this episode is, do you feel lonely and why? Please share your comments with us. And thank you for being with us until the end of this episode.